least the idea.
Check, 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 1, 2, check, check.
Yeah.
And the very last turn that has like 15 minutes, he goes, I think you can only do that if you're
No.
what?
No.
You know what I'm saying though. He pulls it off because it was like a certain
Right. Yeah.
but it was so glorious.
And that musical introduction is our melodic way of saying, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society, where independent thinkers, that would be us, gather in a safe, nurturing environment, that would be this, to explore issues of social, spiritual, and ethical significance as we try to make a difference in this world. I'm Steve Goldberg, a proud, brilliant member of this congregation, and I'd like to extend an extra special welcome to Eva Wright, because it's her birthday today, but also to any, hold your applause, any guests, visitors, or newcomers. If this is your first time at First Unitarian Society, I think you'll find it's a special place. And if you're interested in learning more about our special buildings, we will be conducting a guided tour after today's service. Just meet over here by the windows after the service, and we'll take good care of you. Speaking of taking care of each other, this is a perfect time. In fact, I don't know a better time than right now to silence those pesky electronic devices that you just will not need for the next hour, because instead of worrying about your phone, you'll be leaning forward or sitting back to enjoy today's service, which I know will touch your heart, stir your spirits, and trigger one or two new thoughts. We're really glad you're here, and now we invite you to join in a moment of centering silence so we can be fully present with each other this morning.
Please remain standing for our opening words and the lighting of our chalice. Into this home we bring our hunger for awakening. We bring compassionate hearts and a will toward justice. Into this home we bring the courage to walk on after hard losses. Into this home we bring our joy and gratitude for ordinary blessings. By our gathering, we bless this space. In its shelter, may we know ourselves to be blessed. And if you will join together in the words found in your order of service as we light our chalice. Community is the spirit, the guiding light of the tribe, whereby people come together in order to fulfill a specific purpose, to help others fulfill their purpose, and to take care of one another. And if you will take a moment now to turn and greet those around you. And I invite anyone who would like to come up for our message to please come on up. The young, the not so young, somewhere in between the young and not so young. Hey guys, good morning. How are you? How's your summer? Is it going super fast? It feels to me like summer's going super duper fast. Hi. Well, we have a story today that's called Rumple Buttercup. How would you feel if your name was Rumple Buttercup? It used to be, before he was Drew Collins, he was known as Rumple Buttercup. I was going to say, and now you know what's going to happen, right? So it starts by saying, "Come close and I'll tell you a story. Once upon a time, long ago and far away in a tiny town beneath a purple-peaked pine tree, there lived a monster named Rumple Buttercup. He had 5 crooked teeth, 3 strands of hair, green skin, and his left foot was slightly bigger than his right, 11% bigger. He was weird. And so Rumple worried that if anyone ever saw him, they would be scared, run away, or throw rocks at his head. So he spent his entire life hiding underground in a rain drain, right by a garbage can in the middle of town where no one would ever see him, but where he could still see them, laughing and playing, singing and dancing, walking dogs and jumping rope, but most of all, not being weird. This guy has lots of straight teeth. This person has more than 3 strands of hair. No green skin on this one, perfectly proportioned feet, and this one down here is cute and fluffy. Living underground wasn't all bad, though. Rumple made the most of it and had a nice little home he decorated with old garbage he found in the can outside. There's his home, a tin can chandelier, a broken umbrella toe scratcher, a footstool made entirely out of bubble gum and beans, and an old-fashioned garbage chair with roller skate wheels and rusted radio headrest. There he lived day after day, week after week, year after year, alone. So one day he reached in the garbage can and took out 2 lollipops, a piece of chewed gum, 3 strands of spaghetti, some melted licorice rope, a petrified pretzel, a handful of candy corn, and created, wait for it, Candy Corn Carl. Even though he was just a bunch of old candy that Rumple had glued to the wall, Candy Corn Carl was Rumple's best friend in the whole world. And Rumple would talk to him for hours a day. "What you been up to, Carl?" But Carl never replied. "Okay, well, hang in there, Carl. Get it? Hang in there because you're hung on the wall. It says, if Carl was real, he probably would have liked that joke, but since he was a bunch of candy stuck to a wall, he just stared. When Rumpel wasn't building stuff out of garbage or talking to Carl, he would listen to the voices above ground and pretend they were talking to him. With his eyes shut really tight, it was as if he was part of all the fun happening above. And somebody saying, "Can anyone get my cat out of that tall tree?" "I can." "Wow, those are some great dance moves." "Why, thank you." But when he opened his eyes, he would remember that it was all just a dream and no one was ever talking to him. Sometimes at night, if the moon wasn't too bright and if Rumpel was feeling adventurous, he would go above ground with the help of a very simple disguise. Now, this is Rumpel's above ground disguise instructions. Step 1, get a banana peel out of the garbage can. Step 2, put it on your head. Step 3, close your eyes. And step 4, slither your head up the drain and sit very, very still. Lying quietly by the garbage can, no one would notice him, and if anyone saw him, they would just think he was a pile of garbage. Hidden under his banana peel, Rumpel almost felt like he was normal. Year after year, with his eyes shut tight, he would feel the breeze of the changing seasons. In October, he could hear the crunching leaves and almost taste the apple cider. In December, he would hum along with the passing carolers. And in July, he could imagine the beautiful fireworks. But at the end of each night, he was always reminded that he was still all alone. The leaves were turning green, which meant that Rumpel's favorite day was fast approaching, the annual Pajama Jam Cotton Candy Pancake Parade. On the 17th Saturday of summer, everyone in town would wake up late, keep their pajamas on, and march down the center of town singing and dancing and lighting fireworks, laughing and eating giant bushels of cotton candy pancakes. That sounds delicious. Rumpel loved this day most of all because it was the one day of the year that he could actually go out in daylight. With all of the noise and the commotion, no one would ever notice him, as long as he had his disguise. After a whole year of waiting, the day was almost here. The night before, Rumpel was so excited he could hardly sleep. He woke up early the next morning, brushed his 5 crooked teeth, combed his 3 wispy hairs, and slowly, carefully slithered his long green hand up the rain drain to find a banana peel. But the garbage can was empty. That's the top view of the garbage can. Nothing. There was no banana peel. Oh no, thought Rumpel, I'm going to miss the Pajama Jam Pancake Parade. I can't go above ground without my disguise or people will think I'm weird. So he lowered his head and cried. And he cried and he cried, and that is when he heard it. "Aren't you going to watch the parade this year?" Rumpel couldn't believe it. Was Candy Corn Carl finally talking after all these years? He whipped his head around in amazement, but Carl was silent. And then he heard the same voice again, a little bit louder this time. "Can you hear me down there, mister?" The voice wasn't coming from Candy Corn Carl. It was coming from the rain drain. Someone above ground was talking to him. "Sorry to bother you, but we were just wondering if you were going to watch the parade this year." Rumpel sheepishly replied, "What do you mean?" "We couldn't help but notice that you weren't in your usual spot, so I just thought I would check to make sure you were okay." "You can see me?" "Of course we can see you. You're kind of hard to miss." "But aren't you scared of me?" Then a different voice replied, Why would we be scared of you? Because I have 5 crooked teeth, 3 strands of hair, green scaly skin, and my left foot is slightly bigger than my right. I'm weird. Well, look at me, replied the boy. I have really big cheeks, metal on my teeth, and my entire body is covered in freckles. And the man said, look at me. I have really thick glasses, a super pointy nose. I can't pronounce the letter R. All of a sudden, Rumpel didn't feel so alone. He moved closer to the rain drain, got up on his tippy toes, looked out, and saw the entire city looking down. Okay, this one says, my hair is too curly. My hair is too straight. I'm allergic to dogs. I'm taller than my big brother. I only have 1 eyebrow. I'm shorter than my little sister. My toes look like tiny carrots. I can't grow a mustache. Peanuts make my face turn red. I sing like a frog. I look like a frog. People are allergic to me. And that's when Rumpel realized everyone is weird. And that's what makes us great. Pulling Rumpel above ground, the boy remarked, you know, there is one thing about you we always thought was strange. Oh no, thought Rumpel, what? Why do you always wear a banana peel on your head? And Rumpel just smiled. All this time they could see him, and nobody cared that he had 5 crooked teeth, 3 strands of hair, green scaly skin, or even a banana peel on his head. And the town was so happy their new friend had decided to join them above ground, they insisted he lead the parade from on top of the highest float. High up there above ground, way higher than he ever been before, Rumpel could feel the wind in his 3 strands of hair. He could taste the cotton candy pancakes in his 5 crooked teeth. And he could finally feel the warm, welcoming sun beating down on his green, scaly skin. But the warmest feeling of all he felt on the inside, knowing he was surrounded by all his new friends who all wore banana peels on their heads in honor of their newest friend, Rumpel Buttercup. The end. Way to go, Rumpel! Everybody just wants to belong, right? Thank you for being such great listeners to my story about Rumpel Buttercup. And we are going to rise in body and spirit in all the ways we do to sing you out to summer fun with hymn number 95.
There is more peace. One more. There is more joy. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Please be seated. Our reading today from the Reverend Elliot Kemmler. Last fall, our weekly small town newspaper had 2 stories I loved. One was a thank you note from the animal control officer to several residents for rescuing a herd of 5 ponies and 1 goat. Apparently, the goat figured out how to unlock the barn gate and liberated everyone while the owners were away. The ponies and goat were trotting down the road toward Dunkin' Donuts and who knows where else. Neighbors gathered, recognized and identified the runaways, and got everyone safely back to their barn. The second story was a plea from a reporter asking the person who had stolen a styrofoam gravestone to please return it to its rightful owner with no questions asked. The gravestone's creator sets up a free haunted house for the neighborhood kids every Halloween. We were all encouraged to keep an eye out for the missing gravestone, which at 4 feet tall should be hard to hide. The next week, we got the reassuring news the gravestone had been returned. This is small town life at its best. Drivers stop to let you in because if you cut someone off, you'll see them later at the post office. At the dump, people set out their useful junk on a concrete wall so you can get rid of your own trash and come home with someone else's. We use town meetings as our form of governance, which means sitting in the middle school auditorium and voting on important things like whether we can afford a new senior center by raising our hands. There are no secret ballots, relatively few secrets at all, and for almost 400 years, people have managed to live together here despite fierce disagreements. But these are not the best of times. Around the same time as the runaway goat and the missing gravestone, our elected town leaders proposed putting up stones at all the town entrances engraved with the words, "All are welcome," and it quickly turned horrible. The welcome stones uncovered ugly things: mistrust, fear, racism, homophobia, barely buried beneath the surface of this rocky New England soil. Cruel and painful words were spoken. There were warnings about busloads of illegals and criminals who would arrive once the stones went up. The church I serve was accused of promoting a pro-gay, pro-immigrant agenda, which I was proud to confirm. When it came time to take the vote, after weeks of bitter argument and contempt on all sides, I had to force myself to keep my eyes open. I didn't want to see who voted no, but I knew I needed to look, to see my neighbors' faces in a moment which felt like a referendum on our community's heart. The vote to keep the welcome stones passed by a solid margin, for which I am grateful. But it was still a painful time. Even yet, I choose to believe in community. I choose to believe in the difficult, slow work of building a common life. I believe in the strength and the goodness of neighbors living side by side, finding each other's lost goats and gravestones, even when we do not agree about things that matter deeply. The welcome stones have been put into place now. The best hopes of those of us who wanted them have not come to pass, and neither have the worst fears of those who did not. Time will inevitably soften their edges. I pray we will become more able to live into the welcome they proclaim. In the meantime, we are still here, our lives interwoven in this place we call home. Thank you both. Thank you. There are many summer rituals in our family, activities we do every year that really mark the season. Time with grandparents, late night movies, walks for ice cream, trips to the pool, and of course, one of my favorites, the summer workbook. Every year in June, I head to the bookstore and I get lots of those wonderful books with names like Summer Brain Quest, Morning Math Busters, and Smart Summer Splash. My children have never been as delighted or enthusiastic about these books as I am. The other day, Owen was, I wish I could say happily, but no, working away in his summer brain quest, and he came to the story of the tortoise and the hare. The activity was to read the story and then answer questions. You all know this one, right? It goes something like, once upon a time, there was a speedy hare who bragged, "I am the fastest animal of all." A tortoise, tired of hearing the hare boast, challenged him, saying, "Shall we race?" The hare laughed at the tortoise. All of the animals came to watch. The race began and the hare sprinted ahead. The tortoise began walking at his slow and steady pace and didn't stop. The hare thought, "I am so fast. I have time to dance and relax." He twirled and boogied and then sat down and fell asleep. The hare woke up when he heard cheering, "Hooray for the tortoise!" The hare walked to the crowd of animals at the finish line, and the tortoise said that familiar line we all know so well, "Slow and steady wins the race." Then we moved on to the questions, which were, what lesson did the tortoise learn, and what was the lesson for the hare? I was fascinated because really, is there any lesson here beyond slow and steady wins the race? What else did they want him to take away from this tale? So we talked about maybe the lesson for the hare was to keep going. Don't fall asleep. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Maybe being the fastest isn't always what's best or most important. And I began to wonder if there was more to this story than I may have believed. Owen suggested we rewrite the story. This was a common practice in his first grade classroom, looking at classics like The Three Little Pigs or Little Red Riding Hood or The Gingerbread Man, and looking at them from the perspective of a different character or coming up with a different ending or putting a surprise twist in the middle. So we decided to try this with the tortoise and the hare. So the first thing we did was go back to the original. Is there something else that the hare could have learned besides that proverb of persistence, slow and steady? The hare was a bit overconfident, wasn't he? A little too sure of himself and his abilities, a little too quick to underestimate his opponent. He messed up, plain and simple. He made a mistake. So our takeaway from this traditional tale was that we could learn from failure. We could look at what happened, what we did or didn't do as objectively as we could to see what we could learn. From this, we decided that the hare most likely understood his folly. And instead of feeling like a failure or getting stuck in how he had messed up, he picked himself up and challenged the tortoise to another contest. The tortoise, feeling confident from his recent win, accepted, and another race was set. On the day of this race, the hare did not think so little of his opponent, and he remained alert and energetic all through it, and as you might predict, this time the hare won. So what happened next? Did the tortoise wallow in self-pity and self-judgment, thinking how he could never keep up with the hare, how he would never win again? No, we thought if we were writing this story, we would say that the tortoise sat along the side of a stream. And as he watched the water flow down and along the rocks and around a bend, and he watched and he realized that there were things that he could do that the hare could not. Sure, he would never be as fast as that hare, but he, the slow tortoise, could swim. So he challenged the hare once again. This time with the condition that he, the tortoise, would decide the path they would use. Now the hare, fresh off his win, readily agreed. The race began, and the hare, of course, took the lead. And after crossing a short distance, the hare stopped mid-track. For what was this before him? There was a small river that now spanned the distance between him and the finish line. As he stood there wondering what he could do, the tortoise caught up, crossed the river with ease, and won. Now, we have a hare who learned from his mistakes and a tortoise who learned to recognize his strengths. Instead of wallowing in what he couldn't do, he created the conditions in which he would succeed. Instead of comparing himself to the speedy hare, he recognized what made him unique, what made him strong, what would help him succeed. We didn't end there. Next, we imagine the tortoise on one side of the riverbank, staring at the hare on the other side, and at that moment, they realized this may have been a part thrown in by the mother in this story, and not the 7-year-old boy, but go with me. They realized that after all this, they had grown quite fond of each other. They had spent a lot of time together with all of these races, and now they considered one another friends. The tortoise swam back over to the hare, and they decided that with their combined strengths, they could accomplish great things. They began having team races in the forest, with the tortoise and the hare being an unbeatable pair. The hare would carry the tortoise on his back until they reached any water, and then the tortoise would take over. Alone, they each had their individual gifts. Together, they were unstoppable. And that is where we ended, I promise. Owen and I had so much fun with this story. I would encourage you to try this out. Take a story that you know well and give it some twists and turns, a new ending, a surprise middle. After we were done, and he had very gratefully gone off to do something else, I realized that this story, our new, much longer embellished tale, may have something to say for all of us. Like the hare, we all make mistakes. Some of us more often than others, and some of us will go to great lengths to avoid making one. Maybe you grew up in a family where no one ever admitted they were wrong. Yet being afraid to be wrong can keep us from trying new things, from taking a risk. Some of us may do the same things over and over and over again, even though they aren't working, just because trying something new would be scary, and there's a greater chance that we will screw up, that we will say the wrong thing, we may hurt someone, and we may need to say that we're sorry. The world's best wisdom says mistakes, even failures, are generative. They're necessary for growth. Mistakes are how you get to new knowledge. Thomas Edison said, "I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." And George Bernard Shaw quipped, "A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing." And the Danish Nobel Prize winner Niels Bohr said, "An expert is a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field." By definition, most of us humans are a bit of a mess. We're all weird. Most of the time, our transgressions and our injuries are small. We forget what we love on a regular basis. We fall down and fall short all the time. We betray one another, often by accident. And then we let some strange mix of pride and fear and shame get in the way of what we need to do next, which is own it and speak it and say out loud, "I messed up, I'm sorry, I'm asking your forgiveness, and I want to make this right." Just like the hare in our reimagined tale, we can make mistakes, we can learn, and we can get up and try again. And when we do this, we can remember the gifts we have each been given. Sometimes it is hard to admit. We don't want to toot our own horns. We don't want to flatter ourselves or boast about what makes us special. But we know that there are a lot of issues out there today. Doug's reflections last week were called "The End of the World as We Know It." The past 48 hours are proof enough that we are living in dangerous, depressing, and desperate times. There are people who need your magic. There are causes that need your passion. There are groups that need your commitment. This is not a time to hide your strengths, your wisdom, your light. I'm not asking you to consider single-handedly saving the planet, or the whales, or the homeless. I'm asking you to consider the words of the ancient rabbinical fathers who said, "You are not expected to complete the work, but neither are you permitted to abandon it." The work is not yours to do alone, but there is work for you to do. My colleague Rob Hardy says the world is too beautiful to be saved by one voice and too fragile to be held by one set of hands. What is your passion? What is calling to you? What breaks your heart and keeps you awake at night? What is one thing you can do? You, with all your talents and your gifts, your wisdom that you never really believed you had, your beauty and your strength. What is one thing that you, only you, can do? One thing I love about the stories that we tell over and over again, like the tortoise and the hare, is that they acknowledge the degree of our elaborate interconnectedness and the extent to which the stories of others shape our own. These stories stay with us because they communicate an awareness about what is possible. They bring hope to those who are cynical or despairing. They remind us that our lives are woven together here with one another, with all living things. And we long to belong. We are each a bit like Rumple Buttercup. We look up from the tiny spaces we keep ourselves in, thinking that no one would really accept us if they knew how weird we truly are. And then, like Rumple, we realize we're all weird in one way or another. And that's what makes us great. We are far more alike than we could ever be different. We know we need one another to persevere. It's one of the great gifts of community. We come here to this place where we belong to refill our wells so we can keep going, finding those things and those people that sustain us, that make it possible for us to carry on. As the African teacher and author of our chalice lighting words, Sabon Fusome, wrote, "A community is an environment where you can find a home in each other's heart and soul. It is a living entity where a group of people are empowered by one another to carry out their purpose and use their power responsibly. Community empowers you to embrace your own gifts and holds a space for all its members to work at becoming as close to their true selves as possible." Resilience, gratitude, faith, beauty, these we build together here, knowing that the building of community is a slow and steady process. We must believe in it strongly, even when mistakes are made, learning how to grow together, to say, "I'm sorry," and begin again. Learning to see our gifts and the gifts of others, knowing we are stronger together. As Elliot Kemmler said, "Still, I choose to believe in community. I choose to believe in the difficult, slow work of building a common life." My friends, I believe in this as well. I believe in you. I believe in me. I believe in this shared miracle of grace and mercy, this messy, imperfect miracle of community that we slowly and steadily build together, our lives interwoven here in this place we call home. And I now invite you into the giving and the receiving of our offering. Our offering goes to support the continued work of this community, and we thank you for your generosity.
We thank you for your generosity of treasure during the offertory. We also want to thank people whose generosity of time has made it possible for today's service to run so smoothly. As I name these wonderful volunteers, give them a hug a little later on. Include them in your estate plan. They deserve all kinds of appreciation and thanks for their volunteer spirit. I'm talking about our lay ministers today, who were John McGevna and Ann Smiley. And speaking of being smiley, we are greeted by the smiling faces of Claire Box, Joan Heitman, and Pamela McMullen as we arrive this morning. Our ushers have been Liza Monroe, Elizabeth Barrett, and Sam Bates. The hospitality and coffee are being provided by Eleni Musared Varga, and all is right with the world because Jean Hills has been preparing the coffee. Karen Rose Gredler is staffing the information table. Betty Evanson is making sure that the pulpit palms are nice and green and vibrant. And our orchids have been donated for July and August by Nick and March Schweitzer. We appreciate that. We also appreciate John Powell serving as our tour guide this morning. And we appreciate Eva Wright for spending her birthday with us today. Just a couple announcements to draw to your attention. One is that in 2 weeks, we have this year's version of Service Sunday. More information is listed in the Red Floors Bulletin for you. Again, 2 weeks from today. And 2 hours from now, we are hosting, actually 3 hours from now, we are hosting the monthly meeting of Moses. And if you'd like to learn more about their work, the work of this group that is supporting a more fair and humane criminal justice system, we are hosting their monthly meeting beginning at 2 o'clock here in this building. With that, the announcements are over, and I invite you now to get ready for the cares of the congregation.
Each week we come together here, carrying our joys and our losses. We enter into this space with full and heavy hearts. In light of the violence that has once again claimed innocent souls and acts of anger, despair, and hate, I offer these words from Reverend Sean Neil Barron. There are not enough candles in the world. If we were to light one for each death, each one gunned down, each one attacked, each one battered or caught in the crossfire. If each time this happened, we gathered all together, massing, converging on town square and common green, lit only by the faint, dancing light of a candle. Together lamenting, together rejoicing in the life that still lives, there wouldn't be enough candles. At first, there would be runs on the stores to buy them, a new practice taken up with vigor, shelves left bare, determined remembrance for each departed at first. After a while, though, it would just be another item to buy on the list, every night gathering together to read yet another set of names. Each night would bleed into the next. Even still, there are not enough candles. Part of me wishes we would engage in this lament. Part of me wishes those who sell the guns, those who make the weapons, the ones who pass the policies, the ones who deploy the troops, the ones who utter words filled with hate, would all be there. That slowly the names would smooth away, the rationalizations, the false projections, the twisted logic, the false hopes, the idealistic dreams that all dwell within the violence. But I know there are not enough candles in the world. So as John lights candles and places them in our bowl of sand, I invite you into a moment of silence for all those lost, all those grieving, all those in pain. With aching and lamenting hearts, may we remember our calling to a larger love that is needed now more than ever. May strength be given to all those whose lives have been ripped apart by unbearable pain. And may strength be given to us all to go forward and create the world we so desire. Blessed be. And amen. And I invite you now to rise in all the ways we do so we can once again sing about love. Hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. One more time, love will guide us. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us.
May you be filled with the blessings of this gathering. May you carry these blessings with you as you depart. May you discover the places in the world where these blessings, your blessings, are needed. May you have the courage to share them. And may there always be an open place within you to receive the blessings of all those whom you will meet along the way. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of love, the warmth of community, the fire of justice. These we carry with us until we gather together again. Blessed be, Go in peace, and please be seated for the postlude.